enormously grateful and no little humbled by this very prestigious award. I actually volunteered in recently good time before the peace accord in Kumanova. When I came to Albania, I was told I could go directly to the front, which I then was on the way to do when then there was peace. Thank God for Kosovo. In Kosovo at that time, I would say it was a bit of a class society. The upper class were all the internationals with good pays. Putin is just like Milosevic, but with nuclear weapons. That's the only difference. Every time I come here, I feel joy because I was here 25 years ago.
Niels Henrik Hug në vitin 1999 po punonte si jurist në Danimark dhe po jetonte një jetë në paqe. Megjithatë, zotri Niels, atë që po e shinte në Kosovë, pra që po ndodhte në atë kohë, nuk po e linte të qetë dhe po mendonte që të kontribuonte në një formë për çlirimin e Kosovës. Prandaj një ditë ai vendosi që ta lente jetën e qetë në Danimark dhe të vinte në Kosovë për të dhënë kontributin e tij. Sot në emision e kam të ftuar zotrin Niels, i cili do të na flasë më shumë për eksperiencën e tij. Ai gjatë ditës është dekoruar edhe me një dekoratë presidenciale për kontributin e tij nga ana e Presidentës Osmani. Mr. Niels, it's an honor and a pleasure for us to have you here.
Thank you.
Today you were decorated by President Vjosa Osmani with a presidential decoration for your contribution to Kosovo. How does it feel to receive the recognition, and what does this honor mean to you?
Well, let me first say it was completely unexpected. But when that is said, obviously I feel enormously grateful and no little humbled by this very prestigious award. And I must say, being in this company with all these very deserving people like I was today, that was for me, I guess, a once in a lifetime experience.
And why did you felt surprised for this decoration?
Well, I mean, I'm not used to getting awarded for anything, and especially not at this level. I mean, I have been involved in a lot of campaigns, not only in Kosovo, but also in Denmark and in Greenland and Scandinavia, and actually in a lot of places in Europe. But this came out of the blue, I would say.
Mr. Niels, in the introduction, I said that in 1999 you decided to leave your, to let in fact your peaceful life in Denmark and came to join KLA in Kosovo on that wartime. First, can you tell us what was your first time that you heard about Kosovo, and why you decided to came here and to be part of that war?
Well, all these things happened 25 years ago, and I guess a lot of, especially young people, are not really familiar with these, with what happened at that time, and especially if they're not from the Balkans. But I would compare the situation in Kosovo 25 years ago with the situation we have now with Ukraine. I mean, you have an authoritarian aggressor that wants to subjugate and carry out genocide and ethnic cleansing in a neighboring country. And obviously the majority of the people in Europe is very upset about that, and so was the situation back in Europe at the time when the Serbs tried to run out all the Kosovo Albanians in Kosovo, and I mean this was not only a matter for Albanians, it was also a matter for all of Europe, and a lot of people thought that NATO was a bit slow to react, and the fact that ground troops were not implemented was a cause for concern. I myself come from the green movement. I've been an environmental campaigner for, I think, almost 30 years, and the breaking point came for me when the German government threatened to split up because of internal division in the German Green Party. At that time, UÇK-së wanted a strong European and NATO representation in Kosovo to fight the Serbs. But a lot of people who perceived themselves as Greens were so-called peace activists and wanted for the party to get out of the German government. So I think at least a few of the people who identified with the German Green Party and were in fact green activists thought that also the environmental movement should be represented at the front line in Kosovo.
Yes, before we are going to talk how you came here in Kosovo, first, what were you doing at the time in your life when you made the decision to come to Kosovo?
Well, I have a legal background. I'm a jurist, and I have worked in that capacity on and off for several years, and also used it in my career as environmental campaigner in the NGO community. And at the time, I had also written a couple of books, which I continued with also after I returned from the Balkans.
Yes, and before coming to Kosovo, first you went to the Albania. Okay, if you can explain to us the road that you had to go to Albania and then to Kosovo.
I think this was archetypical actually for volunteers who were not ethnic Albanians and actually had family or friends who were already there. I almost randomly found some Albanian cafes in Copenhagen,
okay.
and just entered one of these without knowing who I would meet, and actually almost immediately I was put into contact with an activist who's very well known in Denmark, Sikiri, who then put me into contact with what you could call the civilian KLA organizer in Denmark at the time, Ibrahim Jemali,
okay.
and he then started to prepare me as well as he did with the other volunteers for going to first Albania and then to Kosovo. But actually, the organizers in KLA in Scandinavia worked together closely, so I also had the chance to meet some of the organizers in southern Sweden, where you have a very large Albanian diaspora, and where a lot of people were actively involved in supporting KLA.
Yes, and for how many days did you stay in Albania first before coming to Kosovo?
Well, the thing is, I actually volunteered in reasonably good time before the peace accord in Kumanova. I think it was in June 1999. But they wanted me to make a little propaganda in the Danish media in order perhaps to attract more volunteers. So that delayed the process a little bit. But when I came to Albania, I was told I could go directly to the front, which I then was on the way to do when then there was peace. Thank God for Kosovo, possibly also for me.
Yeah.
So I did in fact not go to war.
Yes, and when you arrived in Kosovo, what did you see and experience, if you can tell us firsthand?
Well, I crossed the border the first day that the people from the refugee camps in Albania were, and probably also in North Macedonia, was allowed to return. So I was in this enormous train of fugitives, and I continued to prison, where I registered as a mind cleanser in the KLA. But I mean, prison itself was not really affected by the war, but the surrounding villages were to a large degree more or less destroyed. And that was also my experience when I then traveled further into Kosovo. I mean, it was a disaster area actually.
Yes, and what was your job, if you can explain to us more as a KLA soldier?
Well, I worked briefly as a mind cleanser, and then I think this part of KLA was more or less dissolved because they were all wanted to get into private companies because that was where the money was. But only a few, and I tried to do that myself. And actually, I stayed in prison for almost a half year, and then I continued to Pristina. I mean, at that time I began to get some political connections to. There was a Green Party in Kosovo, and it had been there for several years, but because of the Serbian oppression, it had more or less been prohibited. So all the political parties that had, so to speak, gone under the radar re-emerged, and I got involved in this Green Party, which was located in Pristina at the OSCE's political center in Nina Teresa as an international secretary in order to help them get international contacts, because until then they had more or less been totally isolated from the neighboring countries and also from Europe.
Mr. Knights, you have mentioned that time felt different during the war, with every moment counting. How did this intensity of war affected you emotionally and mentally?
Well, I would rephrase this thing about intensity, because it was intense at the time, but it was the intensity of a civil life during what I would call the birth of a nation. I mean, at that time, the Serbs were out. There was not a functioning government. Actually, the international community took all the vital decisions in close cooperation with the NATO and KFOR. But I mean, when you have such a situation and you have to establish a state, I would say, from the ground up. I mean, everything is intense and interesting because the whole population is on the pathway to democracy, and I mean, it's a whole new situation. And at that time, the first democratic elections, I guess, in the history of Kosovo, were about to happen, namely the municipality elections in I think it was in September or October 2000 yes, and I mean everything happened so fast, and it was a very open and transparency process because a lot of people came together. So if you're interested in politics, you really have to you have the opportunity to observe a lot of phenomena that you don't usually have the opportunity to observe, and that was very intense. I would say that the year I was in Pristina, at least, working in the political party center at Nina Teresa was, I mean, I experienced more there in one day than I did 6 months back in Denmark. So it was very interesting.
Yes, and how was your life after the war, first years?
Well, I lived like the locals, if you can use that word. I mean, in Kosovo at that time, I would say it was a bit of a class society. The upper class were all the internationals with good pays, and I mean, in order to go to Kosovo, I mean, you and this applies to the people in the United Nations, but also government representatives from other countries and also the NGOs. When you go there, you are really paid well, even by non-Balkan standards. So in some cases, these people really lived the high life, although obviously they also worked. And then you have the local people who are actually scrambling to survive from day to day. And I sort of lived with the locals and was accepted as one of them. And I mean, that's why I think I have so many friends still that I keep in contact with, because we went through some of the same things, although of course I cannot never say that I have experienced what most of the population in Kosovo went through during the persecutions in the 90s.
Mr. Niles, looking back at your journey from deciding to join the war to being honored today, what emotions come to you when you reflect on everything you have experienced in Kosovo?
Well, I have no regrets. I am happy I went there. I only regret that not so many other non-Albanians went to Kosovo to join the fight against oppression and tyranny. I see a very clear parallel to the situation now in Ukraine. This is, I mean, Putin is just like Milosevic, but with nuclear weapons. That's the only difference. So I see a completely similar situation, and I fully understand why Kosovo identifies so clearly with Ukraine, because they have a common heritage in this regard, I think. But every time I come here, I feel joy, because I was here 25 years ago and saw how the Kosovo looked at the time, and now everything is better. I mean, obviously not everything is perfect, but that goes for all European countries, including Denmark. But to see how far Kosovo has come and how how much progress there is, and how much optimism, and also how skilled and well motivated people here are. I mean, it's a really
Yes.
real pleasure.
Yes, that is what I was going to ask you.
No.
Is this Kosovo that you imagined on 1999 that is going to be 25 years after the war, 26 years now?
Well, I mean, so much has happened that I wasn't in a position to imagine that it could take place. But I would also say there are some disappointments, and that's not related to people here. It's related to the European Union. I would have expected that Kosovo would have been a member of the European Union a long time ago. I mean, not least because so many internationals were here. And obviously, people in Kosovo is not to blame for that, and not the various governments of Kosovo. I mean, it's because some EU member states, for reasons I don't understand, will not recognize Kosovo as a sovereign state. And I think that unfortunately some of the Serbian mentality that was so visible back in the 90s still exist. So hopefully there will be a change of mentality in Serbia. I mean, you cannot, if you want to enter the European Union, you cannot have a leg in each camp. I mean, either you're in or you're out. And we all know that Kosovo will be 100% in when they join the European Union, and so should the Serbs.
Yes. For your experience in Kosovo, you have written a book. Can you tell us shortly about the book, what you have wrote about Kosovo?
Well, I think I revealed a lot of the content of the book during our conversation here. But obviously, I think the first part is about what I experienced in the KLA and the people I met from there and the stories they told me. I mean, it's not my story. That's in the first time of the book. It's the KLA fighters' stories. I mean, the stories of the people I met and what I saw. And the second part is about these campaigns we had in Kosovo's Green Party in Pristina before the municipality elections, and obviously the Twitter campaign, because we got bombed, plays a major role here. It was actually the first and only time that a European Green Party office has been bombed ever. But I mean, the Green Party is much more about this campaign. We actually at the time had affiliates in all. I mean, we had the candidates in all major Kosovo cities, because our chairman Davut Maluku, who was a former energy minister in Hasim Tacic's interim government, had very good contacts from his time as an energy minister in virtually all of the Kosovan cities.
I don't know, Mr. Niles, if you have followed recent politics here in Kosovo. Our Prime Minister have been criticized from internationals because of some of his actions in the north of Kosovo, where our Serbs, most of Serbs live there, but our government has fight some criminal groups there. What do you think, if you have followed this recent politics in Kosovo? What do you think for this criticism from the international to our government?
Well, I don't know about the Kosovan internal politics because I don't follow it so much anymore. But I know that every sovereign state, or the inhabitants in every sovereign state, in my opinion, has the right to environmental protection, climate mitigation, sustainable developments, but it also has the right to safe and secure borders and the right to control its territory with respect of minority rights. But as a minority, you don't have the right to sabotage or subvert or assassinate. I mean, if Hasim Tachi and Presidentja Vjosa wants to control Kosovo's territory and secure the borders, I think they have every right to do so.
Mr. Nice, if you don't have anything to add, I want to thank you and to congratulate you for the decoration that you had today from presidents.
Thank you.
Okay, ishte kjo të nderuar shikues intervista me Niles Henrik Hook, I cili pra kishte ardhur në Kosovë për t'u bashkuar ushtrisë lirimtare të Kosovës në vitin 1999. Mirë po, si s'na tregoi, ai pra vetë nuk është që e ka përjetuar edhe aq shumë luftën për shkak se ka ardhur në pjesën e fundit, pra kur vese ishte arritur marrëveshja e paqes.